What role can citizens play on one side or the other of this issue?
The most important thing citizens can do is we will be posting a copy of this letter that's being sent to Congressman DeFazio. This situation is in his district. They can download this letter, they can forward this letter on, they can make phone calls. If we want to enact change within Josephine County and have accountability to the Bureau of Land Management, we must contact our congressional representatives and demand an investigation. As it is, it's we the people, they're our elected representatives, they work for us, and we must challenge them to hold accountable these federal agencies. So the citizens contacting our representatives demanding an investigation is what people can actively do themselves.
So you really feel that citizens can make a difference one way or another about the federal government?
Absolutely. Strength in numbers. We live in Josephine County. We're not going to fix the nation's problems, but we can fix the issues here in Josephine County. But that takes a community of our citizens and people that have been affected by these issues or care about these issues to step off the curb, get involved, and voice their concerns.
You've come under some criticism for working with the miners. What do you think has been the result of your being called in on this issue? What's the final result?
I think the final result is the community of Josephine County, statewide and nationwide, has learned that Oath Keepers will willingly stand for the protection of the individual constitutional right. You know, we're a constitutional republic. The protection of the individual right protects the rights of all. We have believed or been led to believe that we can't push back or we can't fight back because they'll come after us. There will be reprisatory action that will take place, and that's inappropriate. It's we the people, it's our government, and we're responsible for constraining it. That's what the Constitution does. It constrains the operation of government. Now, as we have stood down our security operations, we have said as soon as they had their day in court, their guaranteed day in court, we'd stand down the security operation. We have done that. It's now incumbent upon BLM to ensure the safeguarding of the Sugar Pine mine claim, the cabin, and the equipment. We have agreed not to provide an active security force because they've been given a stay. This is now on BLM. If anything happens to the cabin, anything happens to the equipment, it will be evident and obvious BLM ignored the judge's order of a stay and went around it. At this point, BLM has no business going on to that mining claim. They have no business inspecting it. They have no business doing anything until these guys get their day in court. So anything happens up there, this is BLM's responsibility. It's on them now. That is what they wanted. That's what they've received.
Joseph, you know what kind of show we have.
Yes.
Every operation does all kinds of good things and occasionally, whoops, a little misstep. What's the mistake that you and Oath Keepers made? There's usually at least one during this operation.
Dale, we've never made a mistake.
Good answer.
Yay, that's right.
With everything, I don't call them mistakes. We have had learning opportunities. As we stood up, we never understood the complexity this would grow to, and as you're going to go through that process, there's going to be a roller coaster ride of highs and lows, and we experienced all of that. Throughout the entire operation, we ran it for 5.5 weeks, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We had no serious injuries. We actually wound up saving the life of an AMP reporter who suffered a massive stroke on site, and he wound up being air evac'd up to Oregon Life Sciences. So we had a lot of things that worked well. We had a lot of things we learned we can't work it that way or do it that way, and we corrected on the spot or adjusted as the operation progressed. So yeah, there's always going to be mistakes made. Nothing goes off without a hitch, or nothing goes off perfectly. We have to remember, everybody involved in this was a volunteer. They were not paid. They interrupted their lives. They came from all across the country. South Carolina, Florida, Massachusetts. We have Missouri, Minnesota, Colorado, all over the Northwest. We have Texas. So these were people that felt strongly about the preservation and protection of constitutional rights, that gave up their lives, that came here to stand for them, and they did so. And they did so willingly. Our average age up there was probably 32 to 33. The majority, 80%, were veterans that had recently served in Iraq and Afghanistan. These are men and women who had gone into harm's way at our nation's request to protect our freedoms and our liberties in this country. So when they return into our country, their oaths are all enemies, foreign and domestic. When we see a domestic enemy as the BLM denying the due process, Fifth Amendment, Fourth Amendment, that becomes a domestic enemy. They are willfully violating the individual constitutional rights, and it's important to protect that. And when these men and women who've served overseas, they come back into our nation, they continue to serve, they continue to protect, they're very upset and they're almost incensed that our government, the same government that asked them to go into harm's way, would willfully turn around and violate someone's rights. And that's highly inappropriate. Even though they make their own administrative rules, they do their own regulations, those rules and regulations must be constitutional in nature. It is not for their ease or their facilitation of their process. They have to hold to the Constitution. Regulatory or not, they may not believe that, but the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It protects us all. And when agencies believe they can willfully violate that or circumvent it or navigate around it, something needs to change. They have to be tacked back into place. This is how you do that. You do it professionally, you do it with respect, and you do it with discipline. And in the end, you succeed. They have their stay, they'll have their day in court, and ideally there will be an accountability of BLM and the way it's conducted itself, and hopefully some member of Congress, DeFazio, who has a 4th district, will say, hold on, how are you treating and why are you treating the citizens of Josephine County like this? Why does your law enforcement agents feel the necessity to walk onto a mining claim and point a weapon at an 81-year-old man's head who is absolutely no physical threat and the guy's twice his size? Explain that to us. Put that on the record. That's called accountability of our government.
Final question for you at this press conference from me. Joseph Rice, you said that the Oath Keepers have not made any mistakes during this operation. What's the biggest mistake that BLM made?
They were not truthful in their narrative. BLM is unwilling to admit they made an error. They are unwilling to look at the facts, and they are trying to promote and push forth an agenda as they would like it to be. They're trying to push forth a narrative as they think it should be, where the facts and the documentation show completely something different. So Jim Whittington, to the media, was untruthful. He lied. He said BLM had no idea what was going on at the Sugar Pine Mine until 2 archaeologists stumbled across it. Yet that BLM had been receiving assessments on that mine every year for the last 40 plus years. So with that regard, BLM's untruthfulness, their unwillingness to admit they made a mistake, and they continue it today. They know they're wrong, but they will not come out and admit it. They're trying to find a way to navigate or get away from it. That's their mistake. They work for us. It's not an agenda. We own the public lands. They are the manager of the lands, and they must be constrained and work within what this community, Josephine County, sees as the value, and how the value of this community wants their public lands managed and administered. And their unwillingness to be truthful in that discussion, their unwillingness to engage with the county leadership, that's BLM's mistake. If they're not willing to do it, they need to go someplace else. It's time to head on down the road.